What's up guys, today I've got a very fun video for you, and that is going to be the greatest wild Hearthstone deck of all time tier list. Before we get into it, make sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm and also click that subscribe button as well, and you can catch me on Twitch every single night at midnight PST, link in the description. Okay, so without further ado, let's go into the rules. So this is the best 30 card deck of raw power level that could be queued at a point in time on ladder. And I've chosen the most representative card I could think of for each particular deck. Most of these decks should come to mind immediately, but I will be talking about which one each is. So let's rate our first deck, Aggro Shaman. I think Aggro Shaman was pretty good back in the day, but just wouldn't be very competitive with a lot of these top decks. Star Aligner Druid, absolutely one of the best decks of all time. That's SS, no question about it. Now, Big Priest with 4 mana Barnes, that deck was super strong, but it was mostly related to Barnes high roll, and ultimately its win rate just wasn't as high as it needed to be. And another deck, Kingsbane Rogue, which we'll get to, has always had a very good matchup against it. And now, 5 mana Possessed Lackey Cube Warlock. Now, they were missing a lot of the tools that we have now, but 5 mana Possessed Lackey is just absolutely insane. Gonna go ahead and put this in top of B tier for now, but we'll see if it moves later on. Even Shaman, I think Even Shaman is again one of those decks that has been strong, but is outclassed by the absolutely busted decks that needed to be nerfed later. Giants Warlock or Giants Hunter, I think they're both basically the same deck historically. They both did the same thing and had similar win rates. I'm going to go ahead and put this in C tier. Their win rate was never that good. The high roll was great, but overall, I didn't find the deck that compelling. Now, Jade Druid at its strongest point was actually in Knights of the Frozen Throne. It didn't have a lot of the tools they have today, but they had 5 mana Spreading Plague, they had 10 mana Ultimate Infestation, and that was enough. Those cards are absolutely busted. Gonna have to put this in S tier, no doubt about it. Kingsbane Rogue, I think this was another one that was maybe a little too strong at points with Leeching Poison, but definitely had decks that countered it, strategies that countered it. Gonna go ahead and put this in A tier behind Big Priest, just because Big Priest I felt like could be a little more competitive with anything when it coins out Barnes on 3, and that happened pretty frequently. Release Day Odd Demon Hunter. Now, Skull of Kul'dan, and I think the Imprisoned Antaean, that 5 mana guy, absolutely busted. That deck was so good, and I don't think people remember because it was just a day where they didn't realize that deck would have been SS, maybe even higher. Absolutely SS tier if we're talking Release Day Demon Hunter. Now, Odd Paladin. I think Odd Paladin is another one of those decks that at points has been incredibly strong, and with level up was on that next level. If you're looking, we can kind of see a pattern here, right? SS tier decks, they needed to be nerfed immediately. S tier decks, maybe they deserve a nerf soon. And then A tier decks probably got nerfed eventually. B tier, maybe they didn't even get touched. And then C tier, not super relevant when talking about the best decks of all time, but people would like me to mention decks like Naga, Sea Witch, so gonna go ahead and put that there. Now, Odd Rogue. I think Odd Rogue is another one of those decks that has been the best deck at many points, but never super oppressive. I don't think it would hang with really any of these decks, to be honest. I think it's better than Giants, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it in C tier anyway. Now, Pirate Warrior, I think the best version was right when it came out in Kazakhstan. It ran like 24 plus of the cards that we still see today, or saw very recently in Pirate Warrior. That deck was way too good, and it was all people were playing for a short period of time. Gonna put that in A tier, because it does clearly have counterable strategies. It had Reno decks to counter at the time, but sometimes it's just too good. The cannon, the patches with charge, that's top of A tier in my opinion. 6 spell Evocation Quest Mage. No doubt about it, that is straight to SS tier. But keep in mind, they were released at the same time as Demon Hunter, and Demon Hunter today is still a hard matchup for Quest Mage, even without the nerfs. So I'm going to go ahead and put Release Day Demon Hunter ahead of 6-spell Evocation Quest Mage. Reno Priest, I think this is one that has at times been just a little too good. I remember when most games on ladder were just Reno Priest mirrors back in the day, so I'm going to go ahead and put this back here, and I think at the time Reno Priest was one of the only decks competitive to Jade Druid, so it definitely deserves its place right alongside Jade Druid in S tier. Now, Reno Warlock, I felt like Gnome Feratu was a good card because they've always run it. I just don't think it's that good. It has been the best decks at times, and it's been the best deck to be competitive with some of these other ones at times, but that doesn't make it good. Just because it's been around for a long time doesn't mean it's strong, and even though it's probably at its highest power level now, it doesn't compete with many of the decks that we see on the list. So gonna go ahead and put that in C tier, though I do feel like it's above Naga Sea Witch. Secret Mage. So a lot of people are going to be surprised where I put this, but I am going to put it right at the back of S tier, and that is because, and we'll get to this, it was the only deck competitive with Snip Snap, and not for reasons that it particularly countered Snip Snap by itself, just that it was a very strong aggro deck that actually managed to beat down a deck that had all the removals and all the OTK threats. So just for that reason, I think it's definitely deserving of S tier, though in the current meta, it's not amazing. Secret Paladin. So I put Secret Paladin on the list not because I thought that it would do well in the tier list, but because it did formerly have the top spot in Wild, and it's definitely the worst on the list. If there were a D tier, it would probably make the D tier, but since we're doing very, very good decks, I decided to bump up all the tiers by 1, just to properly express how strong these decks we're talking about are. Now, Snip Snap Warlock. For those of you that didn't have the pleasure of playing this deck, it really deserves to be in SSS tier, but at that point we're just making stuff up. So I'm going to go ahead and put it at the top of the list, but just know it is a big step above Aligner, though all of these SS tier decks are a force to be reckoned with, right? Decks that I would personally really, really hate to see in the meta for more than like a day or two or a couple days, and unfortunately we were stuck with some of these decks for months. And last but not least is Togwaggle Druid, and keep in mind that Togwaggle Druid was the second best deck in the Aligner meta. Now, it was a lot worse than Aligner at the time, and both it and Aligner have clear counters in Dirty Rat, Togwaggle being a little worse to Dirty Rat. This deck was still super busted, right? As long as you get the Togwaggle combo off, you pretty much win, and if you don't use Aligner, that's okay. And it does keep your deck a bit more removal heavy because you don't have to run those support minions to kill them with your star aligners. So I'm going to go ahead and put this at the back of S tier. I think it definitely deserves to be there. Big drop off from Aligner Druid, but still a historically very, very strong deck. So that's the tier list, guys. Do you think I forgot anything? Do you agree with my choices? Go ahead and put your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will respond to the best ones. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on ladder.